In his dying moments, my adoptive father clutched my wrist, and his last words, like a bolt from the blue, shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "You were just an investment for money." His eyes, once warm as morning coffee when he patiently taught me how to read construction blueprints, were now cold as winter concrete. Through parched lips, he rasped his final warning: "When you find out who is paying, run and don't look back." 3 weeks later, a pathetic homeless man rummaging through dumpsters behind a gas station in Denver, I watched 2 Interpol agents arrive in a black SUV. Their subsequent revelations made me question the very fact of my birth. My name is Ronan Thorne, or at least that's what I'd thought for the past 35 years. I was an ordinary warehouse manager, the kind of guy who wears the same pair of boots until the soles fall off, who knows all the forklift drivers by their kids' names, and who just brings donuts on Fridays. My adoptive father, Gerald Thorne, owned a modest construction firm that built simple homes for hard-working families. Nothing fancy, nothing that would ever grace the pages of an architectural magazine, just a solid roof over their heads. He was a man who measured success by the calluses on his hands and valued punctuality above all else. But Gerald had passed away, taking a secret with him that turned my entire existence into a carefully constructed lie. The Interpol agents who found me near that gas station were a rather unusual pair. Agent Dmitry Vulov, towering at 6 feet 4 inches, had shoulders that barely fit through doorways. His distinct Russian accent softened words that might otherwise have sounded threatening. His partner, Agent Claire Rousseau, was his complete opposite, a petite woman, about 5 feet 5 inches tall, with delicate features more suited to Parisian runways than international law enforcement. They approached me like a wounded animal, cautiously and deliberately, their badges reflecting the dim glow of the gas station's fluorescent lights. "Ronan Thorne," Vulov said my name as if it were a question he already knew the answer to. "We need to discuss your true identity." I was picking at a half-eaten burger someone had thrown into the trash. My hands trembled with hunger. My pride had long since been pawned along with the house I'd once proudly called my own. The smell of stale grease and desperation clung to my clothes. Just 3 weeks ago, I was a man with a job, a mortgage, a life that made sense. Now, I was learning that even my name was someone else's property. "Your DNA matches a missing child case from 1990, Rousseau stated, her French accent giving the words an almost musical quality. "An infant, abducted from Manhattan, from one of America's wealthiest families." The burger slipped from my grasp. Gerald's last words echoed in my mind, like a prophecy finally making sense. "You were just an investment. Someone had paid them to take me, to hide me, to make me invisible for 35 long years. $10,000 a month," he'd rasped, punctuated by the beeping of medical equipment, every month, without a single delay, until his death. "The family never stopped looking," Vulov continued, pulling out a tablet displaying images of people who looked eerily like me, but dressed as if they'd never had to worry about an electricity bill. "The reward grew each year. It currently stands at $456 million. $456 million. The sum was so absurd I couldn't help but laugh. The harsh sound of my laughter startled a stray cat scavenging near the dumpster. I, Ronan Thorne, forced to eat scraps, while somewhere in a luxurious Manhattan apartment, billionaires were offering $500 million for my return. Who am I? The question escaped me in a hoarse whisper, like an echo of Gerald's dying voice in that hospital room. "Your birth name is Sebastian Navarro," Rousseau said softly. "Your father is Alejandro Navarro, owner of a pharmaceutical empire. Your mother is Valentina, a former Italian diplomat. You have siblings who grew up tortured by the uncertainty of whether you were alive or dead." Sebastian Navarro. The name felt foreign on my tongue, as if I were speaking a language I'd never learned. I was Ronan Thorne, son of Gerald and Martha, raised in a modest brick house with a leaky roof and windows that rattled with passing trucks. I knew how to handle a hammer, read blueprints, and efficiently stack pallets. I had no idea how to be Sebastian Navarro, the kidnapped heir to a multi-billion-dollar fortune. Ronan Thorne's life was turned upside down when he learned the truth about his origins. He was the kidnapped heir to an immense fortune. Vulov, the man who delivered the news, added, "Payments to your adoptive parents ceased with Gerald's death." There was something in his voice that sent a chill down my spine. It became clear that those behind the abduction knew Ronan's secret was exposed and that he was vulnerable. It was then that Ronan understood the meaning of Gerald's words. Run. It wasn't a warning about his biological family, but about those who had stolen him. Someone who had paid a fortune for 35 years to keep the secret, and now that it could unravel, Ronan might become an inconvenient obstacle. Rousseau, the other agent, showed a photograph of a woman praying in a cathedral. Your mother lights a candle every night for 35 years now, praying for your return. But the concept of home had lost its former meaning for Ronan. Home was Gerald, teaching him precision in his work. It was Martha's banana bread cooling on the counter. It was a life built on secret payments from people who wanted him invisible. "What now?" Ronan asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the storm of emotions. Vulov, extending a hand to help him up, replied, "We'll take you to your parents, who never stopped looking, and we'll find out who stole 35 years of life from all of you." Ronan accepted the help, leaving his old life behind. But Gerald's warning haunted him. "When you find out who is paying us, run." He understood that some truths were worth more than $456 million, and some lies could be deadly. Before the fateful news in the hospital, Ronan's life had been simple and straightforward. He worked as a warehouse manager in Denver, content with his modest means. Each morning began with a strong cup of coffee and toast, to the sound of classic rock from the radio, as he laced up his steel-toed boots that had seen many concrete floors. The warehouse smelled of cardboard and diesel fuel, a smell as familiar as his own skin. His adoptive parents, Gerald and Martha Thorne, had raised him in a small brick house on Wayne Coop Street, where the roof leaked and the floorboards creaked, betraying every late-night trip to the bathroom. His father owned a small construction firm, Thorne and Associates. There were no associates, however, just him and Ronan, who helped out during summers. They built simple homes for simple people, with solid frames and small yards where children could play. From childhood, Ronan noticed oddities that didn't bother other children. Why did his birth certificate look so new, as if it had been printed just yesterday? Why were there no family photos in the house before his 5th birthday? No baby pictures, no first steps, no infant photos in Martha's arms. The family album began with a 5-year-old Ronan with a gap-toothed grin, as if he'd appeared out of nowhere. "You're special, Ronan," Martha would say, stroking his unruly dark hair, so unlike their own fair locks. "More special than you know." Sometimes something strange would flicker in her eyes when she saw him reading or fixing the lawnmower, as if she saw someone else through him. Her eyes would fill with tears, and she'd turn away, busying herself with dishes that were already clean. His father was different, practical, detached, always mindful of the clock during conversations. He taught him to work hard, to keep his head down, and to ask for nothing from anyone. "The world doesn't owe you anything, son," he'd say, teaching him to patch drywall or fix pipes. "Everything you get, you earn with your own hands." He'd hold up his calloused hands, as if displaying a diploma from the University of Hard Knocks. But his life had its own secrets. Late-night phone calls that made him pace nervously in the garage, bank statements he burned in a barrel in the yard, men in suits watching the house, then driving away when Gerald emerged with a shotgun. Ronan Thorne's life, that of a simple man, took a drastic turn one fateful day. Before then, he lived an ordinary life, working in construction, exchanging texts with a few friends in the evenings, and occasionally checking his email. Ronan's father, Gerald, always brushed off questions about business difficulties, explaining them away as fierce competition in the construction industry. When Ronan turned 33, a terrible illness struck his mother, Martha. Pancreatic cancer left no time for preparation. In her final months, she shared her cooking secrets with Ronan, telling stories of faraway places and relatives he'd never met. Martha died holding her son's hand, whispering something that sounded like, "Forgive us," though it might have been, "Love us." Ronan chose to believe the latter. Gerald took his wife's death hard. He started drinking more, neglected his work, and often stared into space, as if seeing ghosts. The construction business began to crumble. Lucrative contracts vanished, banks stopped returning calls, and equipment broke down one after another. The day everything changed began as usual. September 15th, a Tuesday, smelling of rain. Ronan was stacking pallets in the warehouse when his phone rang. The screen displayed Denver City Hospital. "Mr. Thorne, you need to come immediately," Your father is having a heart attack." The forklift keys slipped from Ronan's hands, clattering onto the concrete floor. His boss, Bernie, took one look at his face and tossed him the keys to his truck. "Go, family comes first." The drive to Denver City Hospital felt like an eternity. 17 minutes filled with prayers to a God he no longer believed in. The hospital greeted him with the smell of antiseptic and fear. Nurses bustled through corridors that had seen too much sorrow. In room 314 lay Gerald, hooked up to machines emitting erratic rhythms. His face, weathered by years of labor, seemed gray against the white sheets. The strong hands that had built houses and taught Ronan everything he knew looked fragile as paper. "Ronan?" Gerald rasped when the nurse left them alone. His eyes, usually sharp as a hawk's, were clouded with pain and something else. "I need to tell you something. I should have done it years ago." Ronan pulled up an uncomfortable chair and took his father's cold hand. "Dad, save your strength. The doctor said you need rest." "No time for rest." Gerald squeezed his son's hand with unexpected strength. "And no time for lies. Martha's gone. I'm going. You deserve the truth before it dies with me." The cardio monitor's rhythm quickened, mirroring the rising dread in Ronan's chest. Whatever Gerald had to say, it tormented him from within more than any illness. His confession came out in halting gasps between the beeps of the machines. Gerald's eyes fixed on his son with such intensity that Ronan's gut clenched. "You weren't adopted through an agency. We were paid. Monthly payments, $10,000. Ronan's legs weakened, his knees buckling against the metal armrest of the chair. "What are you talking about?" "Someone rich, very rich. They paid us to take you, raise you, keep you a secret, keep you alive, but make you invisible." Gerald's eyes darted around as if he expected someone to burst into the room. "They said you were in danger, that people would be looking for you. Bad people." The room swam before Ronan's eyes. 10,000 a month for 35 years. His mind tried to calculate while his heart forgot how to beat properly. Over $4 million to raise one child. "Who?" Ronan clutched the bedrail until his knuckles turned white. "Who paid you?" "I never knew. The money came through encrypted accounts, Swiss banks, untraceable." Gerald coughed, blood splattered on his lips. "But Ronan, listen carefully. Your real name isn't Ronan Thorne." "Then what is it?" "I don't know. They never told us. Just said to call you Ronan, raise you like a normal kid, never let you stand out." Gerald's breathing grew labored. His breathing became a tortured struggle for each breath. "We weren't supposed to get attached to you. It was a contract. But you—" The orphaned young man's voice trembled like fragile crystal. "Mom and you loved me, right? Martha loved you from the first moment. She objected when I tried to keep my distance, insisting that any child under our roof was our child, regardless of financial arrangements," he whispered, and a single tear traced a path down his weathered cheek. "I tried to maintain professional detachment, but I couldn't resist by your first Christmas. You were so happy with that wooden train." The cardio monitor's pulsing rhythm accelerated, like a drum roll to impending tragedy. "Dad, I need to call the nurse." "No, listen. There's more." He pulled the young man closer, his grip weakening with each passing second. 6 months ago, people came. Professionals. They said the contract was nearing its end. They warned, when the funding stops, we are to disappear, leave you behind. But you didn't leave. Martha was already sick. She wasn't going anywhere, and I couldn't abandon you. Not after 30 years of Sunday fishing trips and driving lessons in that old Ford. His grip tightened slightly, as if trying to hold on to fading life. "But now Martha's gone. I'm going. The payments will stop. We'll get through this together. It'll be okay. Stop lying to yourself, son. We both know I'm not walking out of here." Another agonizing cough followed, spitting blood. "When you learn the truth about your origins, you need to run. Promise me you'll run." "Run from what? From whom?" "From those willing to pay $10,000 a month to hide you. That kind of money isn't paid for nothing. They expect a return on their investment." A wild glint flashed in his eyes. "They'll come for you as soon as I'm gone." Once the protection is gone, the cardio monitor emitted its final shriek, a long, piercing beep, meaning everything and nothing all at once. Nurses burst into the room, pushing the young man aside, their movements honed to automatic precision in the chaos of fighting for a life. Clear. The defibrillator charged. Gerald's body convulsed. Nothing. Clear again. Another jolt, another failure. The doctors declared him dead. At 8:47 p.m., a nurse gently touched the young man's shoulder, whispered words of condolence, and left him alone with the empty shell of the only father he had ever known. He sat there until midnight, holding his cold hand, trying to comprehend that his entire life had been a carefully staged play in which he had unknowingly played the lead role. Every birthday, every baseball game, every driving lesson, all paid for by mysterious figures with bottomless pockets and even darker secrets. The house felt dead without them. In their bedroom, the scent of Martha's lavender soap and Gerald's aftershave still lingered. The young man found himself frantically searching every drawer, every box in the attic, every old cabinet in his father's study. To no avail. No adoption papers, no bank statements, nothing to confirm his existence before the age of 5. But he did find something else. A single key taped beneath Gerald's desk drawer, bearing the number 447. Storage Unit 447 at the Denver self-storage facility contained 3 boxes. Old photographs of Gerald and Martha, young and carefree, traveling through Europe. Bank statements showing regular deposits of exactly $10,000, dating back 35 years. And a single sheet of paper with typed instructions: if anything happens to us, leave immediately, take nothing, trust no one. Too late for that advice. Within 2 weeks, the construction company went bankrupt. It turned out it had been artificially kept afloat all this time. The house was foreclosed on by the bank with incredible speed. The young man's position was mysteriously eliminated. Bernie apologized, citing budget cuts and avoiding eye contact. His car was repossessed, despite timely payments. It seemed someone had pulled a string, and his entire life crumbled in perfectly orchestrated chaos. "Sir, you can't sleep here," a security guard said, finding him asleep on a bench outside the Denver Public Library. All his possessions fit into a single worn backpack. 3 weeks after his father's death, he was rummaging through dumpsters for food, his clothes reeking, his mind teetering on the brink of madness. Who was he? Why had someone paid a fortune to hide him? What was he running from, and what was he supposed to run toward? What was Ronan Thorne trying to escape, or what was his spirit striving for? At that very moment, an imposing black SUV pulled up to him, its engine purring softly, as if counting stacks of banknotes. 2 figures emerged, their movements resembling scenes from an action thriller, but with measured deliberation. The tall man, whose broad shoulders blocked the streetlight, wore an expensive suit that fit him more like protective gear than a fashion statement. The woman accompanying him moved with a grace evoking associations with either a ballerina or a professional assassin. "Ronan Thorne," the man said, displaying his badge, whose golden shield reflected the light. "Agent Dmitry Vulov, Interpol. This is Agent Rousseau. We need to discuss your true identity." In response, Thorne let out a sharp, clipped laugh that sounded dissonant in the quiet of the empty parking lot. "I'll get in line. I'd like to find out who I am, too." Agent Rousseau, without wasting a moment, picked up a tablet and, swiping her fingers across the screen, turned it toward Thorne. The screen displayed a baby, about 6 months old, grinning at the camera with 2 tiny teeth. This child was abducted from his crib in Manhattan 35 years ago. His name is Sebastian Navarro. The baby in the photograph was no different from any other child: chubby cheeks, big eyes, an innocent expression. "So," Vulov began, his Russian accent lending weight to each word, "that is you. DNA analysis conducted 3 hours ago from a coffee cup you discarded this morning confirmed it." Thorne's legs suddenly gave out, and he slumped onto the cold concrete, feeling its chill through his worn jeans. "It can't be. Your biological father is Alejandro Navarro, owner of a pharmaceutical empire estimated at approximately $18 billion. Your mother, Valentina, formerly held a position as an Italian diplomat. You were abducted from your nursery on May 15, 1990. No ransom demands were ever made." Rousseau knelt beside Thorne. Her perfume strangely mingled with the dumpster's stench, creating an unpleasant contrast. "Your parents never stopped looking. The reward started at $1 million and currently stands at $456 million. They hired private detectives, security firms, chasing every lead for 35 years. Why? Thorn's voice cracked as if he'd regressed to a 13-year-old boy. Why was I kidnapped? Why was I hidden? That's what we intend to find out, Vulov replied, extending a hand to help Thorn up. But first, we need to get you to safety. Your adoptive father was right about one thing. Now that he's dead and the payments have stopped, whoever orchestrated this knows you've been exposed. The tablet screen flashed with images, a Manhattan penthouse straight out of a glossy magazine, charity galas where ladies shimmered in gowns that cost more than Gerald's annual income, a family empire with offices in 12 countries, parents who looked like older versions of Thorn himself, with the same dark hair and determined jawline, a younger sister, Isadora, a federal judge at 38, a brother, Maxime, running the European division from a London office overlooking the Thames. They're waiting for you, Rousseau said softly. Your mother lights a candle every evening at St. Patrick's Cathedral, praying for your return. The photograph showed a woman kneeling in prayer. Her face held a sorrow so profound it didn't fade but became an intrinsic part of her, like breathing. Thorn's biological mother, a woman from whose arms he'd been taken before he could form memories. But his adoptive father's words echoed in his head. When you learn the truth, run. What happens if I go back? Thorn asked, struggling to stand steady on trembling legs. Vulov and Rousseau exchanged a look that conveyed regret the question had been asked. There's another complication. The Navarro fortune is tied to certain conditions outlined in your grandfather's will. What conditions? The heir must personally claim their inheritance. If they are declared dead or missing for 40 years, all assets revert to the rival Corvino family with whom the Navarros have feuded for 3 generations. 40 years, Thorn murmured, mentally calculating. That's in 5 years. 40 years, that was the calculation. 5 years until that date. That's why, Rousseau said cautiously, we've harbored suspicions about the Corvinos' involvement. The complication, she explained, was that proving Sebastian Navarro's true identity not only opened the door to wealth, but also turned him into a potential target. The same forces that once deprived him of his freedom might try to finish what they started. Gazing at his reflection in the SUV window, he saw a homeless, haggard man. Gerald's words, warning him of danger, Martha's insistent declarations of his specialness, and the prospect of receiving $10,000 a month for 35 years, all came back to him. So I have a choice, he mused. Remain in the shadows, safe but destitute, or reclaim my identity, thereby making myself a target. There's a third option, Vulov stated, his voice as solid as granite. He offered to help apprehend the culprits. According to him, Sebastian's testimony combined with their investigation could send the criminals to jail for good, depriving them of the ability to harm anyone else. Memories of Gerald Thorn, the man who raised him and warned him of danger, flooded his mind. Then he thought of the parents who had searched for him for 35 years, never losing hope, of the mother offering prayers in the cathedral, of the siblings who had grown up with the ghost of his absence at every family dinner. Take me to New York, he decided, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. He expressed a desire to meet his family and find out why someone had stolen 35 years from all of them. Vulov, without delay, pulled out his phone to arrange the trip. Rousseau opened the SUV door, revealing leather seats that looked more comfortable than any bed he'd ever slept on. One more thing, he added before getting into the car. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. I need protection for everyone who knew Gerald and Martha, and I want to know everything, every lead you've tracked, every theory you have. Agreed, Vulov replied. He told him to buckle up, adding that Sebastian was about to meet a family who had never stopped loving him. The Navarro penthouse towered over Central Park from the 60th floor. Marble was everywhere. Museum-worthy art adorned the hallways like family photos. A private elevator ascended smoothly and silently, unlike the rattling service elevator at the warehouse. His reflection in the polished doors showed a stranger in a borrowed suit, freshly shaven, but still looking like someone playing dress-up. The doors opened into a foyer larger than Gerald's entire house. There stood Valentina Navarro, frozen in the entryway, smaller than he expected, a hand pressed to her mouth. Tears were already streaming down her face before he could take a single step. Sebastian, she whispered, with an accent that made his false name sound like music. My baby." Before he could respond, she fainted. Alejandro caught her with practiced ease, his own composure crumbling as he held his wife. 35 years, he said, his voice cracking on the numbers. We never stopped believing. The subsequent hours blurred into one. Isadora flew in from Washington on a government jet, hugging him as if she'd known him her whole life, not just minutes. Maxim arrived from London on a corporate jet. His handshake was firm, but his eyes were calculating. DNA tests, authentication, lawyers with documents thick as phone books, media blackouts, security protocols, the machinery of wealth spun up to protect its newfound asset. But something was off. Maxime constantly checked his phone, stepping away for calls he took in hushed tones. Alejandro avoided certain questions. Even Valentina's joy seemed tinged with something else, fear perhaps, or guilt. On the third night, he couldn't sleep. The penthouse was too quiet, the kind of silence money buys, nothing like the street noise he'd grown up with. He wandered into the study and found Alejandro looking at old photographs spread across his desk like evidence. "I need to tell you something," he said without looking up, "about why you were taken." He spoke of the reasons he was deprived of home and family. As if to punctuate the gravity of the moment, he poured 2 heavy tumblers with amber whiskey from a bottle probably worth more than Gerald's old pickup truck. "When you were born, I received an offer I couldn't refuse. Sell my promising pharmaceutical patents to the powerful Corvino family or lose everything. I refused, of course. Within a week, you vanished without a trace." So they were behind this atrocity. The Corvino family had kidnapped him. This was what he desperately wanted to believe, to bring clarity to the chaos of his life. His father drained his glass in one resolute gulp. However, despite all efforts, the FBI couldn't find any evidence, any connections, absolutely nothing to implicate them. Then who? The question hung in the air, demanding an answer. But before his father could utter a word, Maxim entered the room, his face impenetrable and severe, like Manhattan granite. "Father, we need to urgently discuss the will." "Not now, Maxim, it's not the right time." "No, it is now." His brother's voice held icy undertones of calculation and coldness. "He has a right to know the whole truth." Alejandro slowly rose from his chair, the weight of years lived evident in his every movement. "Maxim, please, don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Not tell him that if he hadn't been found, I would have been the sole heir to the entire fortune in just 5 years? Not tell him that his unexpected return ruins all my carefully laid plans?" An ominous silence descended upon the room, broken only by the measured ticking of an antique grandfather clock in the corner. Then Maxime let out a bitter, sarcastic laugh like a gulp of strong black coffee. "Want to know who secretly funded the Thorns, those mercenaries? It was our own grandmother. Imagine that." At that moment, Valentina appeared in the doorway, her face pale as a sheet. "No, that's impossible. It can't be." Mother conducted her own secret investigation, hiring private detectives. Maxime continued unperturbed, pulling old yellowed documents from his briefcase. She found traces of financial transactions as far back as last year. Grandmother Navarro, father's own mother, orchestrated this kidnapping. Alejandro slumped back into his chair, as if his wings had suddenly been clipped. "Mother, but why would she do this? What motive?" "Because she knew something none of you suspected." Maxime spread the papers on the table like cards, revealing a sinister truth. "Sebastian is not father's biological son. Mother had a brief affair. Grandmother found out about it through a private DNA test conducted immediately after Sebastian's birth." The room seemed to spin. Valentina's heavy, broken sobs filled the silence. "She simply couldn't bear the shame that would inevitably follow," Maxime continued, his voice now dry and dispassionate. "She couldn't allow a non-Navarro to inherit the family fortune, but she also didn't want to harm an innocent child. So she devised this diabolical plan for his disappearance, so he could grow up safe, never knowing his true origins. That's why the payments stopped," he said, as if the pieces of a puzzle had finally fallen into place. "She died last month." Alejandro slowly rose, walked over, and placed his hands on his shoulders with unexpected force. "Blood means absolutely nothing to me. You are my son. You have always been my son. To hell with biology." But Maxim wasn't finished. "There's more. The Corvino family found out about grandmother's plan about 5 years ago, and they were up to something. That's why Interpol got involved. They intercepted communications about needing to finish the job. Agent Vulov's voice came from the doorway. He had been listening the entire time, it turned out. That's why we need to get you into witness protection tonight. No! He stood, Gerald's stubbornness suddenly asserting itself in him. I'm done running, done hiding. The Corvinos have a contract out on your head, Rousseau said, appearing beside Vulov. $20 million to anyone who provides proof of your death. Then we'll stop them first, Alejandro stated firmly, replacing the sadness in his voice with resolve. I've already set things in motion. The FBI, Interpol, all the resources we have will be thrown at this. That night changed everything. The next 48 hours were spent in a safe house while law enforcement moved like chess pieces on a board. The Corvino family collapsed like a house of cards. Dawn arrests, frozen assets, racketeering charges that would bury them for decades. Antonio Corvino himself was apprehended at Kennedy Airport attempting to flee to Sicily, shouting Italian curses as he was handcuffed. The real revelation came from sealed letters from grandmother Navarro found in her personal safe. One was addressed to him, explaining everything in detail. Her twisted love, her desperate attempt to preserve the family name's honor while simultaneously protecting him. She had planned to reveal the full truth only after Alejandro's death, when the question of inheritance would be moot. But the most important truth was in the last paragraph. There had been no affair. She had been duped with a fake DNA test, manipulated by someone who wanted to destroy their family from within. The tragedy had unfolded as if by someone's malicious design, aimed at destroying family ties from within. 6 months later, Sebastian found himself within the same hospital walls where Gerald Thorne had passed away. But now, it was a donor wing, where a bronze plaque proudly displayed the Thorne Foundation for Lost Children, funded by a portion of his inheritance. The scent of fresh paint replaced the oppressive fear that had haunted him that fateful night. The truth proved far more intricate than anyone could have imagined. Alejandro had insisted on a DNA test, which confirmed the truth grandmother had hidden. Sebastian was indeed his biological son. The old woman had been a victim of deception, orchestrated by an unknown perpetrator seeking to sow discord within their family. The investigator who provided the false results had died in a car accident 2 decades ago, taking his secrets to the grave. Valentina and Alejandro, celebrating 40 years of marriage, renewed their vows surrounded by all 3 of their children. The cathedral was awash in white roses, the flowers Valentina had invariably placed on an empty chair at every family celebration for 35 years. Maxim had the honor of being the best man. The old animosity between the brothers had given way to a semblance of brotherly affection. They still had a long way to go to learn how to be siblings after so many years apart. You know what the hardest part is? Sebastian confided to Agent Rousseau at the Foundation's opening. I can't completely hate any of them. Not grandmother, who believed she was protecting the family. Not the Thorns, who raised me and genuinely loved me. Not even Maxim, who felt cheated. But the Corvinos, them I hate with all my heart. A smile touched his lips, but didn't reach his eyes. $20 million on your head doesn't exactly foster good relations. Antonio Corvino received 40 years in prison, and his sons 20 each. Their empire crumbled, assets confiscated, and their name became a symbol of boundless greed. During the trial, Antonio confessed they had uncovered grandmother's secret and planned to eliminate Sebastian to seize the entire fortune. Interpol was only days ahead of them, thwarting their plans to hire a hitman. Gerald Thorne was right about one thing. Sebastian should have run, not from the truth, but towards it. Those 35 years were stolen not just from him, but from the parents who never stopped searching, from the siblings he never knew, from a life frozen in time, like a photograph no one dared to discard. Money couldn't make up for that loss. $456 million, that's what he was worth to them. But how could you put a price on the priceless late-night talks with a father he was only just getting to know, discovering he was just as bad at following instructions or uncovering his mother's lasagna recipe, perfected in the hope of one day cooking it for her son, or finding out his sister shared his love for action movies, and his brother, it turned out, had a decent sense of humor when it wasn't about inheritance law. Now, Two photographs proudly sit on his desk. A Navarro family portrait taken last Christmas. All of them in matching sweaters Valentina had insisted on. Even the prim Maxim couldn't resist his mother's persuasion. Next to it, a photograph of Gerald and Martha Thorne, the couple who raised him, loved him in their own complicated way, and ultimately tried to protect him. Months after the trial, Sebastian discovered another secret in Gerald's safe, a note he never sent. "Ronan, if you're reading this, you know the truth. We took their money, yes, but we loved you selflessly. Every baseball game, every driving lesson, every time you called me Dad, it was all real. You were the son we never dreamed of. It was never an investment. It was just love. Run if you must, but know this, you will always be our son, no matter whose blood runs in your veins." Now, he is officially Sebastian Navarro, but sometimes, working at the foundation and helping children in difficult situations, he still feels like Ronan Thorne, Gerald's son. The boy who learned to measure 7 times and cut once. The one who knows that family isn't built solely on blood ties, but on time, patience, and the willingness to be there when it matters. As it turned out, these were precisely the skills needed to reunite a family shattered by 35 years of lies. The process of bringing Antonio Corvino to justice concluded last month, culminating a story steeped in 3.5 decades of deception. In the courtroom, the author of these lines stood not as the rightful heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune, but as a man who had grasped the true value of family. Family isn't just blood ties, bank accounts, or wills. It's those who are invariably present, who support through difficult times, who love despite all twists of fate and complex circumstances. $456 million, that's how much I was valued by those who wove intrigues behind my back. But they were profoundly mistaken. My true worth is immeasurably higher. I am worth every tear my mother shed in moments of despair, every candle she lit, every prayer whispered in the night. I am worth the choice Gerald Thorne made, sacrificing himself to warn me of danger with his dying breath. I am worth 35 years of relentless searching that never ceased, and all of this cannot be quantified in monetary terms. My name is Sebastian Navarro, but once I was known as Ronan Thorne. I am both and neither at the same time. I am the son of 4 parents, each of whom loved me in their own special way. I am a brother to siblings I'm still getting to know, discovering new facets of our bond. I am living proof that the longest journey home is measured not in miles, but in years spent searching for the right path back to where you belong.